what is the new method that we have? We've got CDC, or change data capture. Okay, it's a mechanism to trickle feed changes in data from a source database to multiple destinations in near real time. So how is CDC different from some of the trigger-based approaches we had before? The trigger-based approaches was an overhead on the source system, whereas here it is not, because it is log-based. It will act not on the MDF files but on the LDF files, and it will propagate the changes. So let's actually see how to do this. Okay, here I have got my SQL Server database. I'm waiting for your screens to switch over to SQL Server database. I am going to create a new database here. I'm right clicking and saying new database. I will call this as Tech Gig Demo. Okay, I have got a database. Now I have got this query which will use the master to find out there is a table called sysdatabases. In that we have got a column called isCDC enabled. If you see, isCDC is enabled here for AdventureWorks DW, and that's the only database for which CDC is enabled. Okay. Now, how do we ensure that? How do we ensure that we enable? How do we start using CDC? Before that, I'd like to show you the Tech Gig database. If I expand the tables and the system tables, okay. Similarly, if I go on to security, if I look at schemas, there is DB schema, DBO, guest information, and sys. These are the schemas which are available by default. If I take a look at the jobs, okay, whenever you are enabling CDC, make sure that the SQL Server agent is running. If I refresh the agent and take a look at the jobs, you will see that there are no jobs which have been created other than one single job called sys policy purge history. Okay. Now, what have we done? We've just created an empty database. We've not enabled anything on the database yet. What I will do is I will create a simple table consisting of two columns. Okay, column 1 and column 2. I'm going to execute it. I'm going to change this database into the Tech Gig Demo database and execute it. It says the commands executed successfully. Right? Then I'm going to run a command called exec sys sp_cdc_enable_db, and we will execute this. This is what will enable the database to become CDC enabled. Right? So now I have executed the stored procedure. Let's see what exactly the changes are. When I refresh and then take a look again at the system tables, I see that a set of CDC tables have been created. Okay, we'll execute and see we will actually see what each one of them will capture in a short while from now. Let's see what are the other tables. If we go back to the security and to the schemas, we will also see that even in the schema there is something called as CDC schema which has been created for this particular purpose. Now, the question I have for you is, would you enable, if let's say there are 10 tables, would you want to capture changes on all the 10 tables? The answer is actually no. You will want to do it only on your dimension tables, because in your fact tables or in your transaction tables, it is easy to identify what the changes are because they're all based on certain primary keys. They are based on timestamp. Whereas it is in test table 1, which we'll assume to be a dimension table, that we have to capture what it is. So what we will do is we will enable CDC on this table. Okay. Pay attention to the system tables. I am going to refresh my system tables again, and you will see that there are 6 system tables. Right? Now I am going to enable CDC on this particular table. I would also want you to pay attention to what is the message that we get. Generally it says message executed successfully, but in this particular case it will come back and say the jobs have been started successfully. So there are 2 jobs which have got started. One is called capture and the other is called cleanup. Okay. So in order to, that is why it was a prerequisite that you have to actually have the SQL Server agent running in order to do this. So I'm going to go back to my jobs here in the SQL Server agent and refresh this. You will see that there are 2 additional jobs which have been started. cdc.techgigdemo_capture and cdc.techgigdemo_cleanup. Okay. Now let's go back to the system tables and refresh the system tables to see what is the change that happened when we enabled CDC on a particular table. You can see that a new database called testtable1_CT, which is change track, has also been created. Okay. Now we created this table and it was all empty. I'm going to make some changes into the data on this one. I'll say column 1 is 1, column 2 is Deepthi, which is what is my name. Column 2 is Raja N, who is a part of an implementation team of this. I'm going to say Sanjeev. These are all Microsoft employees who have been involved in creating this demo. Now we will go to this change tracking table and do a select top 100 rows. So you can see that there is a, what is LSN? It's the log sequence number or the logical sequence number. It says the operation type is 2 and the values entered are 1 Deepthi, 2 Raja N, 3 Sanjeev, right? So let's actually make some changes into our table to see what is the operation type. I'm going to edit the top rows again and I'm going to change my name from Deepthi to Deepthi Anantaram, which is my name, complete name. And then when I execute this and go back to see what has happened in the change tracking table, I will see that there are 2 new rows introduced. The 4th one is called Deepthi and the 5th row is called Deepthi Anantaram. If you look at the operation type, 3 means old value, 4 means new value. So it's capturing the old value and the new value, and 2 means all new values. 3 is the old value, 4 is the updated value of 3. Now if I actually go and delete something, if I go and delete Sanjeev from here, you can see we've got 1. So operation type 1 stands for any value which has been deleted. Operation type 2 stands for any value which have been added newly. Operation type 3 and 4 go hand in hand. 3 will capture any change. Okay, 3 will capture all the old values and 4 will capture the updated value. Now you don't have to look at any other table, logs or anything. The change tracking table is telling you exactly what are the changes that have happened and at what time sequence. Okay. Did it actually say in this table at what time sequence? No, but it is giving you the start log sequence number. There was this another table here called LSN time mapping, right? So if I query this table, it's saying that this log started at this point in time and ended at this point in time. Okay. So combining these 2 tables, if you want to capture the changes which happened only between today 3:25:15 and between 18th minute and 19th minute, it is possible. We can capture only row numbers 13 to row number 3 to row number 7, right? Because we are using the tran begin time and the tran end time. Let's go back to this one now. So CDC has allowed you to identify what are the changes which have happened because it's automatically logging those changes for you in a separate table. How did we do it? Setting it up was simple. We queried to find out if the database was CDC enabled. If it was not, we enabled CDC on the table by executing a system sort procedure. It created the CDC schema and the CDC system tables. And then we enabled it on a particular table. When we enabled it on a particular table, it created CDC jobs Okay, and it also created the CDC functions which I did not show it to you. But then it is the function which will help in identifying what are the old changes and what are the new changes. Now, there were these different tables. So the captured list of columns will say what are the columns on which we wanted to capture CDC. Why is this necessary? If we go back to the old version of how we did slowly changing dimensions, let's say we had an account dimension. The account dimension would have the account number, it would have the primary holder, it would have the account opening date, which would all never change. And if it changed for a reason. Like if somebody died, then the account was inherited or continued by the secondary owner and so on. But the account balance, now you might argue that this is not a dimension value, dimension are all textual values and I wouldn't have it in my table. But in a real true warehouse kind of a scenario, you would also have the account balance on that table. And then because a lot of reports would say when it's asking for account number, the most common question would be what is the account balance, right? So you wouldn't enable CDC to on a particular column. You would enable it on some set of columns which would actually cause a versioning of your primary information. Similarly, you would have a list of tables on which CDC is enabled. If you did any DDL changes after CDC is enabled, it will capture the DDL changes also. And then indexes are logged separately, and then LSN. LSN will tell you what is the log sequence number, what is the time stamping of when the change happened. Okay. So now all good. We are able to capture real-time data changes. It is easy to percolate it. So the advantage would mean you wouldn't have to wait to move it in batches because you can trickle down your feeds in real time. The question is, what if? What if the source was Oracle? The answer is, well, if any database has got a data file and a log file separately, then it is possible to do it. Let's actually take a look at this blog. Okay. It says that CDC for Oracle in SQL Server 2012 is absolutely possible. It works fine. You have to have the database set to archive log. Should have DBA privileges because you are going to look at the data miner. And then Identity Oracle CDC Designer is available. You can set it up and you can read these changes right from an Oracle database too. So even if it is Oracle, you have a solution. What will happen if it's an Oracle database, like I mentioned, you should have the archive log set to true. You should have the privileges to lead the log miner. The log miner is a powerful tool in which you can do auditing of the system. And then you will run the SQL Server CDC service. The SQL Server CDC service will take these changes and put it onto a staging database. From the staging database, you run an SSIS package in order to push the changes to the final destination. What we would like to point out here is the final destination need not be SQL Server itself. That is, you need not have to move it from an Oracle source into a SQL Server warehouse. You can move it into a DB2, Oracle or PDW, Parallel Data Warehouse. What we're saying is, even if you have to move your changes from an Oracle OLTP to an Oracle warehouse, you can still use CDC. Why would you use CDC? Because implementation of CDC is so much simpler, it is faster, right? So what are the different scenarios? What are the benefits that we have? First thing is, at a very granular level, you are able to understand what the changes are. As you saw, to enable CDC on a system, it took like 5 minutes, and for us to capture those changes and to understand how those changes are calculated. There is elimination of delay resulting from a data warehouse refresh in a batch cycle. This improved return on investments because of greater relevance, accuracy, and completeness of information in real time. The business benefits are you have a decision-making agility in real time. Okay. What